I passed by Kampala Hospital, as I said to my colleagues here, to check on colleagues Francis Isano. He is in a lot of pain, admitted to hospital. Raymond Tamale of NTV, and many other journalists. Nursing wounds, nursing. Fortunately, I don't think any has, so far, from the scans that have been done, any has been found with fractures, but they're in a lot of pain. And I think for Francis, not even able to eat food. Apparently, his neck was squeezed. Why so much violence? What's so special about Kawempe North by-elections? And who will emerge winner of that by-election? To discuss that and more, I have from the National Unity Platform, spokesperson, deputy spokesperson, Waiswa Mufumbiro. Very nice to have you, sir.
Very humbled to be here this evening.
I have the Minister for ICT and National Guidance, National Vice Chairman representing Western Uganda in the Central Executive Committee of the National Resistance Movement, the Honorable Dr. Chris Bariomos. He also represents the people of Kinchizi East Constituency. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, Charles, and good evening, fellow panelists, and good evening, viewers. I am happy to be here this evening.
From the Uganda Media Center, Executive Director, frontliner, from Kapelebyong, from Mulanda, and from Chagwe.
From everywhere.
Yes, I have Ofono Opondo. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening to our viewers. I actually drove from Kapelebyong. The rains started on Sunday, so I dashed there to
plant,
to take seedlings. I did a bit of planting in the morning and I drove back.
What are you planting there?
Everything almost. I do trees, I do food, I do cattle. So I rear animals as well.
And from that beautiful village, I forget.
From Namwendwa.
Namwendwa, yes. Namwendwa.
Yes.
From Namwendwa.
It's Namwendwa.
From Namwendwa.
Yes.
From the People's Front for Freedom. I don't know if you've been registered yet, but
no.
I have the Honorable Proscovia Salam Musumba. Very nice to have you.
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here on such a good day.
Thank you. What do you call a good day?
I call it a good day because it's bringing to the audience, to the entire world, the very things that we've warned this country about. And so it's a good day because we all can see the same things.
Honorable Minister, I want to start with you and to remind our viewers that we will bring you updates of what's happening at the Tally Center. Shamim Nabakos has been there, and as and when we have any updates, we'll be able to bring them to you then. But Honorable Minister, you followed, I think you were in the last rallies in Kawempe North. Yes, you were there. What exactly happened today, especially regarding the people you're responsible for, the media fraternity?
Today, what happened? People went to the votes, to the polls. Yes, Kawempe North. This is a by-election following the death of the member of parliament, and the various candidates representing political parties and the independent candidates have been canvassing for support, selling their manifestos and ideas, and today they went to the polls. And we awaited the results because I think the Tally Center, the Electoral Commission is already tallying the results. Well, regarding the incident of some journalists who got injured, I'm still trying to find out exactly what triggered that confrontation between security officers and some journalists. It is not true that all journalists who were covering the elections were beaten or had a confrontation with the security officers. That one is not true because it's...
Well, Honorable Minister, the facts available. Actually, there was no confrontation between journalists and security officers. People believed to be security officers simply descended on particular journalists. From what we're hearing now is that they targeted particular journalists. So people like Francis Isano, people like Raymond Tamale, people like Hakim Wampamba were being looked for almost individually. Why exactly? Who's responsible for that?
I don't know. We shall have to find out. Because you see, they say the story of hunting will never be known properly if you listen to the hunter and you don't listen to the hunted animal. So maybe you have a version of the journalists. You also need to look at the version of the other people, the security people or people who are on the ground. Because I saw a footage, for instance, of the incident of yesterday where the leader of opposition and the Secretary General of NUP went into private premises of an individual. And in the footage, I saw when they were getting out, the journalist moving ahead of them and then falling behind the vehicle. And then he was carried away. I was given a brief by people who were there, and was saying, first of all, these are party leaders who trespassed on private premises of an individual. And when the owner of the house said, who are you, what are you coming to do, there was a confrontation. And I think the leader of opposition now was using his security to harass the people there. And then they were telling me when the fracas occurred, it was the journalists who were shielding the leader of opposition, something like that. So we shall have to find out what exactly happened. So on the look of it, you may want to quickly blame the security, but we need to know exactly what triggered that kind of confrontation.
Honorable Minister, this is not the first incident when journalists have been targeted, when they've been beaten up.
Yes, I have
been beaten before.
You asking me to talk about what has happened in these elections.
Yes, but I'm looking also at a trend.
Yes.
That seems to be escalating.
Then for today, I think what I was being told, I think in Kazo, Angola, and some two areas, I think people had gathered in big numbers, and the security was telling people, you get off because many of you are not voters, you are like overcrowding, and some confrontation occurred, which is regrettable because journalists should not be beaten. We do not condone that kind of behavior. But at the same time, I have been saying that we need probably to train our security officers and also journalists to appreciate each other's work, especially in situations which are like violent. Because I have also witnessed situations where journalists also cross the line and either behave in a manner which is partisan or disobey orders which are being given by security officers. Although that's not a justification for them to be beaten, but I think there is a need for building the capacity of security officers and the journalists to see how they can coexist, how they can work together. So the journalists are enabled to do their work and the security officers do their work. For instance, there are situations where security may say, you people get off whichever orders. Then you find the journalists, instead of just covering the event, they are also participating in resisting and sowing. And so we have to investigate and find out what exactly triggered this kind of confrontation.
You saw the
but
image.
It's not called for.
You saw the image in the promo of the journalist whose eyes were almost gouged out. In I don't know if we would call that a confrontation. That is footage from days back. Nomination day.
No, I'm saying it's not called for. There is no need for that kind of confrontation, those kind of injuries be occasioned to journalists, but we need to find out what exactly triggered those kind of incidences.
Are you as minister asking those questions? And
Absolutely.
Who are you asking?
The authorities. And we are trying to find out what exactly happened on those polling stations.
We're talking about some people who I know you have interacted with fairly closely. A journalist like Francis Isano, you haven't met more professional people than a Francis Isano. What would provoke a targeted beating of a Francis Isano?
Well, that's what we have to find out. What exactly happened for the security officers to injure him. We would need to listen to him like we have done, but also to listen to the other side and maybe the people who were there, what exactly is part of. Because I find it difficult if somebody was just filming and standing and doing his professional work, why would he be attacked?
What we know for now is that the journalists, particularly photojournalists, cameramen that were targeted simply because they were pointing cameras at these members of security officers, and that the attack is driven by a concern that they're taking a record of what was going on, of maybe illegal activity by these members of the security forces?
It depends on whom you talk to. You get many versions, because when I saw the news, your news at lunchtime, I called one of your journalists who was reporting that I'm being evacuated, I'm almost being killed, and I was in Cheva, and I called her, where are you? Said, I'm in Cheva, and where? She said, I'm in Cheva, and I'm almost being killed. I had moved through the polling station. There was no chaos at any polling station. So we just need to look for those incidences and establish what exactly triggered that kind of fracas. But we are saying it's regrettable. No journalist should be beaten. Even if he commits or she commits a crime, we should use civilized means of bringing the person to book. So we condemn that kind of fracas, which is uncalled for.
Mr. Fonopondo, you head the Uganda Media Center, which is the center where journalists and government communication is coordinated. Yes, under the ministry, but you coordinate that. What do you say about the incidents you've seen, both in the promo here and what you might have picked from elsewhere, about the treatment of media practitioners in covering the Kawempe North by-election today?
Well, it takes two to tango. There must have been a trigger. Journalists were not candidates. They were not voters. They are not candidates' agents. So ask yourself, why were candidates' agents, particularly today? I have not seen candidates' agents being beaten by law enforcement officers. So you ask why. Most likely, and yet they are the ones who have immediate vested interest that their respective candidates should have a fair chance. So ask, why were they not the target? Why not the candidates? Why not the voters? Why specific journalists? If you are saying that from what you have heard from them, it appears to you as if it was premeditated, meaning that some of those journalists had been earmarked by those security officers. Had those security officers been deployed there before, or this was their first time? If it was their first time, how did they know the journalists by name, or even by media houses, so that they target them? So there must be a trigger. Now, personally, I didn't take a lot of interest in Kawempe by-elections from nominations. I was taking it casually because, as I have said on this show before, Kawempe North and Kawempe generally, NRM hasn't won that seat in a long time. So my understanding was that this by-election, NRM was going to participate, mainly to show cause that it is a good party, it has a good platform, it has a good policy, so that probably we improve the chance of NRM going forward, even if we don't win the election. So I didn't take much bother. Whatever outcome, for me as a person, I was ready for it, and I think the NRM should have been ready for it. Two, NRM has an overwhelming majority in Parliament. 350 something out of 500. We can make legislation there on whatever we want. So that election shouldn't have been a do or die. So I had taken that line, that whichever outcome, NRM should have. And thirdly, NRM is supposed to promote democracy. So even if we lose an election, that shouldn't. Actually, we demonstrate if we do fair play. So I had not taken a lot of interest in Kawempe by-election. So there must be a trigger, and as the minister is saying, we are not the investigations officers. I think what we should demand from particularly the police, which is the lead agency in law enforcement, what happened from the footages, I could see military personnel in uniform, in military, well-marked military vehicles.
Including members.
Yes, I could see civilians, people in civilian wear, which is allowed in security operations, people putting on civilian for covert operation. So we need to ask the Inspector General of Police and the Director Operations what happened. Did they, obviously I expect them to have conducted intelligence throughout the campaign period. Did the intelligence inform them that they anticipated trouble spots? What type of trouble spots? Or what kind of trouble? Which then informs the calling for additional support from other forces.
From the footage you saw, which agency appeared to be in charge of that, the security in that area?
Whether the army is deployed there, that is a civil operation, and therefore police takes the lead. All the other security agencies are supposed to follow what police is saying. So the police is the lead agency there, and therefore we should ask the police to account. How did the army people come? Did they call for support? And usually when that support is called, it is usually documented. It is in writing where they ask for support. In an election, they ask through the Electoral Commission. So I think it is fair to demand from the police and the Electoral Commission, how did the soldiers come into play in this election? And then we can ask the army leadership, the defense leadership, what happened. Now, if there was intelligence, for example, that there were groups that wanted to disrupt the election, then we can ask, okay, eventually what happened? How come those groups, did they fear the overt posture of the security deployment? That's why they don't cause trouble, or what? And then we can then again go back and probably fault the intelligence provided. They can have misleading intelligence. They can have sexed up intelligence, fabricated intelligence, and so on and so forth. But I have said on the show, the last time we said, when Narukola was dragged off his motorcycle, I said on the show that the way I know Narukola is a person of a calm demeanor. There shouldn't have been any reason for anybody to drag Narukola off. But I suspect that there are people in our system that have premeditated mind that any challenge to the NRM, any challenge to the government should be met by force. Now, it is our job to ensure that those are weeded out and are put where they belong, because they earned the NRM, they earned the government no marks whatsoever. And so, personally, I will not blame those security people who were there. I will blame who called them and what command did they give them.
Just a quick one before we move on to the Honorable Musumba and Waiswa. The NRM candidate has put up quite a good effort, if you'd say. We do not have the results yet. But where does this leave the fracas that we have seen today and during the campaign period? Where does this leave the credibility of that election?
I had told you in the debate we had soon after nomination, I said Faridah Nabbi stood for Kampala Woman MP in 2021. And in Kawempe North is where she got substantial number of votes. I think in that election she got either 20,000 or 26,000 votes. And that was the reason actually why the NRM, when all the other aspirants came, through consensus building, NRM agreed that Nabbi, among all the NRM candidates, had a fair chance of having a good showing in Kawempe. If not actually winning, looking at the many candidates that had emerged from the opposition. And so I can't understand why people who should have been protecting the integrity of the electoral process descended to beat up one candidate, harass voters, public campaigners, and today, not just descending on journalists, you have seen at the end of the polling, disrupting, vandalizing, scattering election materials, even where votes had been counted. And so you say, do these people actually, were they representing the interest of NRM by that conduct? Certainly not. And that's why I'm saying, I think there are people who any form of challenge to the authority of NRM, whether it is electoral or otherwise, they see it as an affront. And those people, as I've said, in my view, should have no space in the conduct of civil public affairs. And so I'm saying, for me, for now, since I don't have any investigations I've carried out, I don't hold them personally liable. I hold the command that deployed them, because they must have been given instruction. Maybe let us wait and see, going forward, what will be the response of the police and the army leadership, because they cannot deny that those were not their personnel. They can't deny.
Let me get to Waiswa Mufumbiro before I come to you, Honorable Salam Musumba. Honorable Mr. Mufumbiro, you've been involved in the thick and thin of this election so far. Could you bring us up to speed at the time you left? How's been the exercise for you and your party?
First of all, my dress code is unusual because I was coming from the field, and I told my sister that I will be dressed unusually because I don't take my public appearance for granted, but also having gone through law school, I know what it means at what different platforms and what to dress. But lucky enough, Fono Pondo has given me leeway to, and Dr. Variomus. I'm humbled, as I said, to be here with the comrades here and to discuss very, 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 very serious issues. We are, of course, leading the election. We have won at all polling stations. At the Electoral Commission, of course, they are still dilly-dallying with results. In the last 25 minutes, they were declaring that Nabbi has got 700 votes at a particular polling station, which is really, really archaic. It is backward to democracy, and indeed, as all have said, it is a dark day for democracy in Uganda.
How do you mean the declaring 700 votes?
Yeah.
What about the other candidates? You have 9 candidates in that election.
Yes, that is what impunity does. They forget reasoning, and they act like Senior Ofono Pondo has just been dispelling. Notwithstanding, we are in a very, very comfortable lead. Only that we do not know how far shameless they want to go.
Are those results coming from your own tally center?
Our tally center has confirmed that we have won, because the DRA forms indicate that from all polling stations, including where the Minister Kabanda, Misa, and Balam ordered for the vandalizing of government property, because that is not NUP property, that was government property. So for ministers who sit in cabinet to vandalize government property, that is also going in the history of this country. Members sitting in cabinet, appropriating resources for procurement, and they vandalize. We spend over 500 billion shillings on elections, and part of the expenditure is on those materials used for the process. I want to begin with the issue of the actions of the military. It is so ashaming and backward that in the 21st century, our military, that all the years I have grown up, I have heard General Museveni say that he is professionalizing the military. And as a young man, one thing I was sure that Uganda is going to have, given the history and the background we had read about, was that all things may fail, but we will have, as a nation, a professional army. If you see what has happened today, we are far from that. We are far from the rhetoric of having this country, first of all, in democracy, but far from the rhetoric of having a professional army. The escapism that the Minister of Information here is appropriately using to run away from accountability and give empty apologies is clear that that has been their script. Let me tell you, Kazo Angola. At Kazo Angola, the person who was there, the journalists were covering, the Kanare Mugumes were covering, they were covering, I think, the FDC candidate, Khalifa Aganaga. They were covering a candidate, and security descended on them.
They were covering the NRM candidate.
They were covering the NRM candidate.
Yes.
And they strictly came and descended on them because this was on live TV. It doesn't need investigation. It needs for one to be honest and apologize to those that have been hurt. This guy, it was on live TV. They were clobbered on live TV with, first of all, why would we arm our forces with cable wires? Why would we arm? Why would we even talk about beating in the 21st century? I went to primary, and at that time, 20, 30 years ago, caning was part of, corporal punishment in school was part of, was the order of the day for a child to succeed. Today, this parliament of this government has passed a law that corporal punishment should not be accommodated in our schools. Now, they are chasing it from young people, but administering it to people who have children, fathers, mothers, and babies. It is archaic. Francis Isano is one of the young people that photographs us here. We know his character. He has been beaten because he was holding a camera which they looked at as a weapon. They have weaponized. They have now decided to take the press. The reason they were doing that is to have us have a dark day in the election, to have a blacked out election, which they have partly succeeded because he says that they did not descend on all the journalists. He forgets that nearly all the main, in fact, all the main media houses left the field by 2 o'clock. We did not have NTV because Abeka was sick, Lubowa. Raymond Tamale had been beaten. Their different journalists had been clobbered, not only clobbered, but also abducted in drones. They have given a very nasty ordeal of whatever they have gone through. But what happens is that in this country, there are those who believe that they are more deserving human beings than other human beings, even on what is constitutional. I am 38 years old. Why would I go through all this bogus stuff? Because I die to do what is legal. I have not asked our people to go to war like the leaders did. We have not asked them to behave violently. We have followed every law to the letter. Yesterday in Parliament, the Minister of Internal Affairs assured the nation, and this is a General Muhoozi David. He spoke about how it is unprofessional, uncouth, archaic, backward, unwarranted, and unpermissible in any society for security personnel to be hooded the way they are hooded. Hours after his statement, the CDF rebutted, categorically stating that what had been stated by his boss, because by our protocols, a minister is a boss of the CDF, by our protocols, in accordance to the rank and file. Now, the CDF rebutted what had been stated by his boss, the Minister of Internal Affairs, who is responsible for all deployment in the country. The person responsible for deployment in Uganda of whatever security apparatus is the Minister of Internal Affairs. But he is giving a position supposed to be a position of the cabinet, which is headed by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and it is being rebutted by a person who is supposed to be a servant of the people occupying an office of the CDF. And indeed, what he told the country is what happened this morning. Security operatives, hooded, and doing all... The journalists were beaten by hooded security operatives, not showing their identity.
He said balaclava's standard wear for special forces. I think that's what he said.
But why would we need special? First of all, that is also something. You know, the special forces is an elite force. It is supposed to be part of our sanctuary as a country. But now it is in fighting democracy. It is looking at the elongativity of a system that has not given itself the peace to stay longer.
Let me bring in Honorable Salam Musumba at this point. You watched what has been happening in Kawempe North. We don't know the results yet. We have someone at the Tally Center. They'll bring us up to speed with whatever the Electoral Commission comes up with finally. What's your take on what happened today to the journalists and the broader electoral process for today?
Well, it was a bad day. Bad in every sense. And I'm glad it happened in Kampala for everyone to see and for all the journalists also to partake of what has become a script of the new terror machinery in the state. Today, the best way to describe Kawempe North is that it was a war zone, and we should have responded to it as such. It was a war zone, and I don't know who declared the war. There are so many things to watch and ask. Where was the Electoral Commission? Because I think that pack of people is as useless as the beating happened, because they have lost control of a process that is their constitutional responsibility. And so they are very, very guilty of damaging democracy in this country. The presence of the military is not news. I am sure we can plot a pattern. For me, who has participated in many elections and by-elections, I can tell you that elections in Uganda have become a military event. The deployment of military assets, the abuse of military assets is a huge scar. It's a huge scar on us as a society. If you do recall the constitutional making process, we previously had a Uganda army. That Uganda army meant that it was an army for the territory called Uganda. And then we were invaded by the National Resistance Army that morphed into Uganda People's Defense Forces. And I do recall the debate around it, why it was so named Uganda People's Defense Forces. This is not it. What we have is not it. This is another thing, because it's not defending the people of Uganda, it's not defending the constitution that we all agreed to uphold, it's not even defending the state. It's defending people and people's interests, people that have captured the state. And so the loss of command, the chain of command is all lost. I mean, if the so-called commissioner of the Electoral Commission, the latest one, the game changer who was meant to be Simba something, was roughed up by just a security.
Dr. Simba
Kayunga.
Sorry.
I mean,
I was actually at that polling station.
it just tells you the hopelessness of the situation. And so the loss of the chain of command, the broken chain of command, is a big worry to me going forward, and wondering as I'm pleasantly surprised by my neighbor, that he's now beginning to understand things properly from a professional perspective. The terror meted on all of us today. I do believe people didn't work. They were glued on TV, wondering whether it was safe to go to town. Even coming here, I wondered who this terror police was going to attack. They were not going to look for thieves. They were going to attack civilians, and probably young men who do not support the NRM. And you know, they are causing so much damage to young people. And I'm sure the young journalists, full of enthusiasm, full of passion to do their job well from an international standpoint. The way the military is targeting people, and especially men and young men, to damage their internal organs, to damage their balls. What is it about their balls that they want? That a state can want to damage its young people and their reproductive parts, to damage their spleens. Because when they hit a button, when they hit the back of an AK-47, when they kick the young men, they are damaging their pancreas, they are damaging their livers, they are damaging their kidneys, and this is targeted. So what is this Uganda People's Defense Force? Who do they work for? And what is the purpose? Because these are not terrorists. Today was not a day of looking for Lord Joseph Kony, who they failed to catch. And so today, I think gives us an opportunity to reflect and track the path. If we had a diary of terror by this government, a diary of terror, you will start from Luwero.
And the intro for today would be what?
Here.
Today's intro, what would it be?
It would be up to Cairo. The kilometers of terror would be up to Cairo. Because you start from Luwero, you go to northern Uganda, you go to West Nile, you go to Teso, you go to Karamoja, and back to the city. You go to the opposition. You do remember the Black Mambas. You do recall the Chiboko squad. And all this, I think the biggest investment of the state has been in terror. The biggest investment has been in terror. If you look at the assets they unleashed on the population today, why would Mambas come on the road?
Well,
in a geographical, on a geographical, and you know the answer even before you ask. You know the answer.
No, I don't.
You know the answer because you see, we have been warned that when NRM, for any reason, begins to lose control of the population, it will unleash terror on them.
Let's interrogate that after a very short commercial break.
Thank
I'll
you.
just take a message from Michael J. Sally in Masaka, who says, we must remember that recently there was a directive for all media house owners